We're checking in today for a quick tech tools playground tip, and I'm joined by high school English teacher Josh Eddy.
Hello, thank you for having me. Well, I teach at Washburn High School in Washburn, North Dakota, and I teach 7th through 11th grade English.
Okay, jack of all trades. And you're going to share with us the content management system Schoology.
My first year of teaching in Washburn, which was also my first year teaching ever. And so I wanted something that was like Moodle, because at the school where I was student teaching at Bismarck High School, they used Moodle, and I got experience with that, and it was just a really nice way to know that everybody had access to what I wanted them to anywhere that they were at, as long as they had an internet connection.
Right.
And I found Schoology, and it was free, and so that's what I'm here to talk about, how I use today.
That's great. I like that free part. And I like your motivation. Like what I heard in there is you were looking for one centralized location so that it was easier for students to find the information for your class.
Definitely, because you always get students are like, I wasn't here that day, or I'm going to be gone, and now you can just go, well, check Schoology.
It's very handy. So tell us about Schoology and how it works as a content management system.
Okay, so I just pulled up one of my English classes up here, and Schoology kind of has like a Facebook sort of feel to it. You have some things that you can get to easily on the side here, and then you have these different folders for courses, and so I have up here all my different English classes. Each have their own course area that the students can then enroll to through an access code.
Okay.
And so what that means is that it's a completely closed off system. So you have to have an access code to be able to access the course, which is really nice, because there are some resources that I have that I don't necessarily just want out in the ether. And so it's only people who are on that course who can view those. If there's links or surveys that I have to give, then I can just post them on here. And then those are closed again to only those classes. So that's one nice thing about it, needing that access code. This very top thing, I have the username and password for our North Dakota State Library at home, so kids can access that at home. But it is something that the school doesn't just want anybody to have. So I put it on here, then they can't say, well, I can't research from home, because if they go on the Schoology,
remember the login.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell, but some of these folders are a little bit brighter than the others, and that's because you can make them published or unpublished. So I've got things in here that, I don't want them going into those folders quite yet, because we're not quite there in the school year. So I'm going to unpublish them, and then once we get there, then I'll publish them, and they can view what's ever in there. So if I go into Animal Farm here, you'll see a variety of things, some worksheets that I want them to go into, different quizzes, links to outside places that correlate with whatever we're going over, and then also assignments. And you can add any of those types of materials and others, assignments, tests, all of these from this drop-down list. And the tests and quizzes are handy.
When you create a test or quiz in this Animal Farm folder, the students are able to just take that quiz right through Schoology, like they can just take it online?
Right. Yep. So if you have laptops or iPads in your class, I'm to the point now where I'll just say, a lot of the kids have the Schoology app on their phone. They could just take it over their phone. Yep. And there's different questions that you can add, true and false, multiple choice, and others. You can save questions so that you can use them in other places too. So there are objective and subjective grading capabilities. And so if you have, just say all true, false, and multiple choice, it will grade it for you right away. There are a couple other teachers in Washburn who also use Schoology, and so it's kind of nice every once in a while when we find a new feature, we have to share it with the other teacher. I actually have it set up to use these apps. So one of these kind of waffle-looking icons here is the App Center. And if I go in there, I can link and download a Google Drive app to my Schoology. And so what that allows is this assignment that I have set up, and so it's just called Google Drive Assignments. And you can download that to your Schoology, basically. And what that allows me to do is I have a Google Doc with the assignment that they need to complete, all the questions and the directions. And when instead of sharing it to them, and then they having to make a copy on their own and save it and all of that, what this does is I just submit my doc or upload my doc here, and it automatically makes the copies for everybody who's enrolled in the course. And then if I can set up a rubric, as you can see, for all of the different questions, so they know right away what sort of response they need to have. And then I can view what is in progress and then also what has been submitted. So let's say the due date comes and some people still haven't submitted it. I can see where they are in that progress. Are they almost done? Have they not even started yet? And then I can also grade it with the rubric. I can't really show you that without going into somebody's, but that's a handy feature too. And you don't need the Google apps to set up rubrics on Schoology. This just ties the rubric into the assignment on Google Drive.
And so you don't have a Google Classroom set up, but by using the Google Drive, it's doing some of that document duplication, copying, and sharing for you and for your students.
Right. Yes.
Nice.
And that means that they do have to have a Google account, whether they make a Google account through their K-12 account or they already have their own Gmail account. Either way, they have to link that to their Schoology account, and then that's how they get access to that assignment.
Yeah. So kind of a nice workaround that if you're not, some school districts in North Dakota are Google schools, and so this might be a little bit of a duplication. So if you already have a Google Classroom set up, you might not need or want a Schoology. Having used both, I think Schoology is much more dynamic and flexible. Like, you have a lot more options and they're all kind of contained in one place. But probably there's a lot of overlap that you might not want. It's not probably in both. But that's a cool feature that you can add in. As a side note, in that app group, you can add PBS Learning Media as one of the apps so that it allows you to share PBS Learning Media content directly through Schoology as well.
Oh, nice plug.
Thanks. There's PBS Learning Media. But like Quizlet is super handy. So like if you made note cards on Quizlet, if you wanted to use content from TED Ed, which are nice little videos. You saw the YouTube one was up above. If you are an Office 365 school, check out that OneDrive assignments. So if you're already an Office 365 school, rather than using the Google Drive, you might check out that Microsoft app in there so that you have that communication with that Word Online.
One nice thing about this Schoology too, another nice thing is it's another platform for correspondence between teachers and
Yeah.
students and parents. Parents can also sign up for a Schoology account using that access code so that they have access to everything that the student does too.
So they can
And
see the assignments. They can
right,
be nice.
the envelope here is where you can message, and the little bell is any notifications of when you get messages or whenever
Okay.
students submit assignments. I know Remind is another good app that a lot of teachers and coaches use.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have Schoology set up, they can also send you messages about the assignments right away too. So if they're doing an assignment, they have a question, they can message you, and then you can answer them back there too.
I like what you're saying, or what I'm hearing and thinking about as you're talking is I want to have as few tools as possible to do the most work possible. To me, that's more efficient. So it's more efficient to me, like if I can make Schoology this one tool, do my online quizzes, share my assignments, link to videos, organize my folders, and be a text messaging system for my students. That just eliminated like 4 other systems that I used to have to maintain as a teacher and centralized them in one spot. I think
Definitely.
students appreciate that too. Like, have you heard any feedback from students who do use the app? How do they feel about it?
There are definitely kids who I will overhear just pulling out their phones if they're not doing anything. And I
Mm-hmm.
know we see that as taboo nowadays, but a lot of them are checking Schoology, checking if they have, what assignments they have in other classes. And,
Sure.
usually they ask me first, but it is a nice, quick way for them also to access what they need to for different classes. Another handy feature of Schoology is adding discussions, and you can
Mm-hmm.
have students do classroom discussions on Schoology where they have to type and reply to people. It's kind of like a message board almost, where you can pose a topic and then they all have to respond to it on their own, and then you can tell them to comment on other people's as well. So that's a nice place for them to do that as well in writing. And for maybe teachers who don't always teach the same thing every year, but they want
Mm-hmm.
to keep their resources together, like, oh, maybe I can carry some of this over. They have this resources tab here where you can, anything that you create on any of your courses, you can save it in your resources area and then have access to it to copy or paste into a different class, so that, even though, oh, I'm not using this class, I could still use these materials and just carry them over to a different one as well.
That's very handy. Because I like the simplicity of the archival system, because then it would be a clear way. Yes, I have like all of my files in my Office 365 or my general G Drive, but this represents the files I actually used for that class in a given year.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I might have, 14 other things that I've used for Animal Farm in the past, this file can represent the things that I actually used with students the last time I taught it. And I also like the idea that can help me just keep like what have I been using and help that system stay a little bit more student friendly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's just also that added comfort of, oh, I should give a assignment today or a quiz, and you're kind of thinking, oh, did I print that off, or am I going to have time to do that? And you
Yeah.
don't really need to now, because it's up there and it's up there for good. So
Right. You can just go in and grab it. Once
mm-hmm.
it's in there, you can grab that, make a copy of it, and just slide it where you need it to be.
Right. Or if your classroom is technology based and there's already devices there for the students, then it helps on not having to print stuff off, because you can just have them access the worksheets on here, do the
Right.
assignments on here, and then you don't really need to print anything out either. So
In general, how has it impacted just your day-to-day time as a teacher?
two things I would say. The first thing is it's really nice to have the students visually see, okay, these are kind of the things that we're going to be doing for a unit. And then also from my end, it's really handy for grading, especially some of those things that those quizzes where it's just kind of a checkup on those formative assessments.
Yep.
You know, when you have 30, 40 kids and, you know, just these multiple choice questions where you just want to check where they're at, but oh boy, 40 of them is going to take me how long to grade. To just have this do it for you just is an immeasurable amount of time saving.
And it also produces much faster and therefore more relevant feedback for students.
Right.
So if the purpose of that formative assessment is to get a quick check of where the kids are at so that you can adapt your lessons and provide more support, go faster, go slower, whatever the case may be, if you don't get to grading those quizzes for 3 or 4 days, which unfortunately is just the reality of time and life and limited amounts of existence, that data is not it's still good data, but it's no longer as helpful to you as an instructor or to the kids in terms of what they need to be working on. So you're right, like this can provide those students instant feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of my quizzes that I have set up, you can set it up so that after they submit their quiz, they can see the results with the correct answers right away too, so that they know, okay, this is what I missed, this is what I didn't, right away, instead of waiting, like you said, 2, 3, 4 days for the teacher to finally hand it back and they're like, oh yeah, I did take that quiz.
They've forgotten. So that way, like if it's that short little quiz, now that can become a bell ringer at the big class that we're going to take this quiz, and then the results from this quiz are going to guide what you work on as a student. Because if you didn't understand semicolons, guess what? You're going to go over here and you're going to review semicolons. But if you were good to go and you got 100 on this quiz, great, you can start working on your paper. Thanks so much for sharing your perspective on this tech tool.
You're welcome.
It's great that it's free. If your school district is looking for a content management system, I would share the Schoology option because I do think that it's pretty great. But if they're not willing to spend that cash or not able to, it's a great free option to have an individual teacher account.
Right. There's never been a point so far in my 4.5 years of using this where I've been like, oh man, I wish I had the paid version.
Exactly. It's not going to change your life too much. As a teacher, as an instructor, the free version is going to do everything that you want it to do from an instructional standpoint. Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today, Josh, taking the time to hop in and tell us a little bit about why you love Schoology.
Thanks again for having me.